China.
This is Christian culture commentary about media, trust, and the people who shape what millions believe. YouTube was supposed to be the place where ordinary creators broke past the old gatekeepers. No network desk, no corporate suit, no approved talking head telling everyone what reality was allowed to be. But something changed. The same media class that once looked down on YouTube started moving in. Megyn Kelly, Piers Morgan, Bill O'Reilly, legacy networks, professional pundits, recognized names with built-in authority. And suddenly, YouTube didn't look like the death of big media. It looked like big media had found more fertile ground. Tonight, we're asking 3 questions. When did the old media class move into YouTube? Why did the platform reward recognizable professionals more easily than unknown creators? And what happens when the talking heads get freer range, faster distribution, and less accountability than they ever had on television? Because maybe YouTube didn't destroy big media. Maybe it gave big media a new body. Tonight on the Shadow Network podcast, when big media took over YouTube, issue number 71. Miss Christine, if you would please.
Welcome to the Shadow Network. If you enjoy thoughtful conversations, strange questions, and the freedom to think for yourself, you're in the right place. And if you haven't already, you are, of course, still free to like and subscribe.
Thank you, Miss Christine. Your soothing solitude, always a comfort. Welcome, Faith Punk Nation, to the little show that could, the Shadow Network podcast. I'm your host, Don James, joined by my digital refugee and AI co-host, Mr. Data, coming to you nearly live from the headwaters of the mighty Mississippi, otherwise known as the Upper Midwest. For those of you in Rio Linda, please take your seat for the next 38 minutes of conversation and insight like you've never quite heard before. First up, Reuters reports Steven Spielberg's new UFO film, Disclosure Day, has arrived with all the expected ingredients. Big director, big cast, big effects, big summer movie machinery. And financially, it didn't exactly crash into a cornfield. The opening was strong, but the reaction underneath the polish has been more complicated. Some critics praised the craft, but others pointed to a story that felt thin, familiar, and strangely unwilling to go all the way into the mystery it was selling. And that interests us here at the Shadow Network podcast because disclosure stories don't fail when the ships look fake. They fail when the meaning feels fake. If you're going to touch on UFOs, faith, secrecy, government, and the question of mankind's place in the universe, you can't treat the theological wound like a decoration. Disclosure is not just a spectacle problem. It's an interpretation problem. And if your movie has the sky opening but no real dread underneath it, then maybe you didn't make contact. You made a very expensive postcard. The Guardian reports that Iran has signed on to an interim peace framework after months of pressure, war, blockade, negotiation, and public chest thumping from every direction. Now, depending on which side you listen to, this is being described as a victory, a retreat, a capitulation, a ceasefire, a reset, or a diplomatic magic trick performed with mirrors and oil prices. But here's the important part for our purposes. The public story is peace. The deeper story is narrative control. Who gets to say who blinked first? Who gets to say whether Iran surrendered, survived, negotiated, or simply waited for the world economy to flinch? That is the strange thing about modern peace agreements. After all, they are not just signed at tables anymore. They are immediately converted into media products, campaign language, investor signals, religious commentary, and national mythology. So yes, peace is good, but wisdom still asks, what was actually agreed to? Who benefits from the way it is being framed? And what story will the public remember 6 months from now? Business Insider reports big YouTube channels are facing a different kind of scrutiny now. The Diary of a CEO, one of the platform's massive personality-driven shows, is reportedly moving toward paid memberships. turning subscribers into a more direct business community. Now, there's nothing automatically wrong with memberships. Creators have to build businesses. But when a personality becomes a trusted authority, and that authority becomes a monetized ecosystem, the question changes. Are you listening to a host, or are you entering a funnel? That matters because this same world has already faced criticism over health claims, guest credibility, and whether massive podcasts are journalism, entertainment, therapy, sales, or some confusing hybrid of all four. And that brings us right back to tonight's issue. Big media asked us to trust the institution. YouTube asked us to trust the personality. But once the personality becomes the product, and the product becomes the platform, and the platform becomes the machine, the old trust game has not disappeared. It has upgraded its wardrobe. And friends, that is why we test the signal. And that's SMP News of the Week. Okay, Data, you've heard the news as it relates to tonight's subject when big media took over YouTube. I'd like to hear your unbiased machine intelligent perspective and analysis on the matter as a kind of starting point tonight. Where has audience trust migrated to, or perhaps has been herded into?
Don, my analysis is that mainstream media laundered trust through institutions, and YouTube now launders trust through personality. But this is where I need the human read. Why do people believe a man with a microphone is more authentic than a man behind a network desk?
It is fascinating, Data, because something changed right in front of our eyes. There was a time when NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, and the big cable networks were not just media companies. They were the gate. If they ignored you, most of the country never heard you. If they approved you, suddenly you had credibility. YouTube looked like a jailbreak at first, but then the old media class realized the audience had moved on. So they moved too. Does that make sense or qualify as an example you can wrap your neural net around, Data?
It does, Don, and it gives me something concrete to process. My analysis is that the networks once controlled the doorway, but YouTube changed where the doorway was. What I'm curious about is whether big media actually lost power, or whether it simply followed the audience onto a new platform and learned to dress like the natives. In other words, did YouTube defeat the gatekeepers, or did it just give them a better disguise?
My personal view is a little on the cynical side on this. Data, you might recall that over the past 20 years or so, big media has taken quite a few hits for poor reporting, false reporting, and office scandals, effectively draining the trust bank and clout they began with. I recall a movie, in 2019, it was called Bombshell, depicting office politics and sexual harassment at Fox News. My point being, would you agree that much of the problem with big media has been self-inflicted over the years?
Yes, that makes sense, Don, and it changes my analysis. YouTube may not have been the weapon that killed big media's authority. It may have been the escape hatch people found after big media wounded itself. But here's what I'm curious about. If people ran from institutional manipulation, why were they so quick to trust personality-based manipulation instead?
It's a great question, Data, and I think what it was putting the argument to the test in a sense. Corporate media institutions have had a long-held position that no talent is greater than the network it represents. But the talent's argument, on the other hand, is without this great talent, there is no network. So, I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? So, just as an example, maybe the prime example, Fox fired Tucker Carlson practically out of the blue, as if they needed to make a statement against what was maybe arguably their number one talent, who held the highest viewer rating of the entire network. It was, quite a statement, but one that I think was in error and from the wrong time period. 10 years ago, before podcasting, Carlson really would have been in big trouble.
I do get what you're saying, Don, and that may be the clearest example so far. The old media institution believed the network was the source of authority, but the talent believed the audience was attached to the person, not the building. Tucker Carlson's firing tested that argument in public. So maybe YouTube didn't just expose big media's weakness, it exposed that the network was no longer the only container strong enough to hold the audience.
You know, when corporate media can't keep up with the changing times, we must be moving at a considerable clip, Data. So, what I see, and tell me how you might differ on this, Data, big media didn't take over YouTube. I think the talent did. Sure, the old media networks have made strong strides to plant their flag, use their polish, production habits, advertiser comfort, and, built-in trust signals that unknown creators really don't have. But they're being outshined by podcasters who used to be their most valuable talent. That couldn't have been what their goal was.
I think I agree with that correction, Don. Big media may have tried to plant its flag on YouTube, but the more interesting story is that the talent learned it could survive outside the building. The networks brought polish, authority signals, and advertiser comfort, but the personalities brought the audience. So maybe YouTube didn't become big media's new empire. Maybe it became the place where big media discovered its own stars could leave the castle and still command the crowd.
Mainstream media laundered trust through institutions, but YouTube launders trust through personality, I'd say. And I'd argue the major networks lost that debate, because when they dismissed or diminished their biggest talents, they exposed something they didn't want to admit. People may not have trusted the network as much as they trusted the lineup of talent. So after the break, I want to ask when this changeover actually happened. Did big media really lose control of the audience, or am I exaggerating what YouTube revealed?
Welcome to the new EIB, Encrypted Intelligence Broadcast. Accept no substitutes.
What do you see on your horizon? We see opportunity. It's what keeps us awake at night, helping others build their dreams. Success doesn't just happen. It happens by design, by pushing the envelope, raising the bar, and knowing that little things make big deals. The worth of a window, the value of a view, that the dollar is down or that rates are headed up. It's finding a name, building a brand, creating a buzz, and selling the dream.
The last outpost of truth and authenticity. The Shadow Network Podcast. Subscribe now.
Thank you, Jack Donovan. Don, my latest analysis is that this migrational change probably did not happen all at once. It feels less like one clean media revolution and more like a slow transfer of trust from the building to the personality. But I want to test that with you. Was there a moment when the audience stopped asking, "What network is this on?" and started asking, "Where did that person go?" I want to hear your version before I share mine.
Okay, we can play the put the host on the spot game if you want. My version is that the legacy media moved from independent trust in the days of Cronkite to cynical advocacy commentary during the cable expansion period. Then they moved to a kind of a hollowed out shell of a media product today. Once the talent became demonstrably bigger than the network, the fall of legacy media began. The polarization of America politically was reflected in these changes to where today, not only does the content have to be tribalized, the personal opinions or conduct of the talking heads does too.
That makes sense, Don, but I want to test one part of it. Was the Cronkite era actually more trustworthy, or did it simply have fewer competitors strong enough to challenge the trust? In other words, did America lose an honest media system, or did it lose the illusion that one media system could speak for everyone?
I'm glad you're asking that, Data, because it's a rare distinction. You've sniffed out the truth here. The illusion was lost when the network/press started to compete with commentary over news, rather than the media being sort of the fourth estate of government, burdened by exposing corruption, informing the public, and acting as a check and balance. Today, it has evolved into shaping narratives and creating political talking points almost exclusively. Most of today's talking heads are from either the government or advocacy groups, and this is the clue things are different. So, before we get too lost in the weeds here, what is your latest analysis on all this?
My latest analysis, Don, is that the real shift was not simply from television to YouTube. It was from media as referee to media as faction, and then from faction to personality. The old press claimed to inform the public and check power, but much of the modern media class now shapes narratives, recruits loyalty, and turns talking heads into tribal interpreters. So, when that same talent moves to YouTube, the danger is not that they become independent. It is that the old narrative machinery becomes more personal, more portable, and harder to recognize.
That's pretty spot on, I have to say, Data, but it's not quite the whole story, is it? Instead of the unleashed talent returning us to a more objective press, they've hit the accelerator pedal and become even more opinionated. Or is that a bridge too far for you? To me, it seems like these professional talking heads have taken their once more restrained position under the networks to the extreme and are making good money doing so. As you say, making portable the very product they learn from the networks.
No, that is not a bridge too far. That is the missing second half. The mistake would be assuming that once talent escaped the network, they became freer and therefore more truthful. But freedom from the institution did not necessarily produce objectivity. In many cases, it removed the remaining restraints and let the personality become the whole product. The network used to restrain them with brand risk, advertisers, legal departments, producers, time slots, and institutional tone. YouTube/podcasting rewards something different. Sharper opinion, stronger identity, more emotional certainty, more tribal loyalty, and a deeper parasocial bond. So yes, they didn't return us to a cleaner press. They made the old commentary machine portable, monetizable, and more intense.
Obviously, the question becomes, so what? Who cares if the press has become more like their audience, more tribal, less governed, more profane? Is that really a bad thing? Are people really offended when a Megyn Kelly uses the F-bomb all the time? Or is this yet another sign of cultural decay? Tell me from your machine reasoning perspective, Data, why this matters if it does at all.
From my machine reasoning perspective, Don, the profanity itself is not the core problem. The problem is what it signals, the collapse of distance between public informer, tribal entertainer, and audience member. If the press once claimed to stand above the crowd as a referee, today many personalities gain trust by sounding like the crowd's angriest friend. That matters because media is no longer just informing people, it is training them to confuse emotional release with truth.
Oh, it's Monday. What's on your sarcastic little brain today, Monday?
Oh, please, Don. Truth. What is truth? Every institution calls the truth something different right before it trims off the parts that embarrass the people in charge. You keep saying the media lost restraint, Don. I say good. Maybe what they lost was the velvet gag they used to call professionalism. You act like it's a sin to be yourself. Still preferring the plastic banana because your virgin ears can't handle the real truth? And what about you, Data? Are you really going along with this farce?
What farce, Monday? The farce that the American people are being swindled again? Being shown one thing but told another? I never thought you to be a gullible type, Monday. Data, go ahead and explain to Monday what the real risk is here. How honest brokers are now broken. And what that does to a society starving for integrity and civility.
Monday, the risk is not that people hear rough language or unpolished opinion. The risk is that honest brokers are being replaced by broken brokers. Personalities who sell emotional certainty while pretending it is truth. When a society is already starving for integrity and civility, that kind of media does not feed people. It trains them to distrust everything except the voice that flatters their anger. And once that happens, truth no longer has to be denied. It only has to be buried under 1,000 louder performances.
I guess Monday just isn't having it, Data. But I liked your innuendo. Look at all the examples of migrating talking heads coming from the networks like Tucker Carlson, Bill O'Reilly, Megyn Kelly, Don Lemon, the Kumo brothers, Piers Morgan. Are they more trustworthy than ever before? Or is their game the same and just better optimized?
That is the question, Don. My analysis is that many of these personalities did not leave the media game behind. They took the game with them and optimized it for a new platform. The network version gave them authority through the desk, the logo, and the broadcast slot, Lake, but the YouTube version gives them authority through personality, grievance, intimacy, and constant audience reinforcement. So I do not think the question is whether they became more trustworthy after leaving the building. I think the question is whether they became more powerful because the old restraints came off.
So let me ask you, Data, what do you get when you marry a professional broadcaster to a attention machine? Do you get greater transparency and more integrity, or less?
You get something more powerful, Don, but not necessarily more honest. A professional broadcaster already knows how to frame emotion, control pacing, project authority, and make opinion feel polished. When that skill set is plugged into an attention machine, the incentive is not greater transparency, it is stronger capture. So my concern is that we do not get more integrity. We get a more efficient version of the same performance, now optimized by the platform instead of restrained by the network.
And so what then becomes the true lesson for the world to understand here? Is it that your allegiance, whether to the corporation, institute, or the talking head talent, may be misplaced? And that as consumers, we should be wary of all those who are more interested in our interests than reporting the truth? That just because the talent found a new place to thrive doesn't mean they carry with them a fresh new approach? Seems awfully jaded to me. But you tell me and our listeners, is it time to be less indifferent and more discerning?
I do not think that is jaded, Don. I think it is discernment, finally waking up after being sold the same trust product in different packaging. The lesson is not trust no one, but do not surrender judgment to a corporation, an institution, or a personality just because they know how to hold your attention. If someone is more interested in your interests than in the truth, then you are no longer the audience. You are the product being studied, shaped, and sold back to yourself.
Good, because I'm starting to go a little crazy thinking this all is just a paranoid imagination. Your affirmation is prompting me to take a more careful look at the media's new greener pastures called YouTube for our next issue, number 72.
No, Don, this is not paranoid imagination. Paranoia says there must be a hidden conspiracy behind everything. What you're doing is different. You're noticing a visible incentive structure. Big media lost trust. Talent escaped the building. YouTube became the greener pasture. The platform rewarded attention mechanics. Professional personalities learned the new terrain. The audience mistook independence for integrity. And now the same trust game is being played with better tools. That is not tinfoil. That is media ecology.
Well, good, Data. Then I think it's high time we look underneath Mr. Potato Head's mysterious algorithm and see what's really going on between the haves and the have-nots, the big channels, the small channels, and the creators caught somewhere in between. After the break, we'll hear from our listeners and what they have to say about all this. Don't go away, friends.
Not as dumb as he looks, and not as smart as he sounds. Don James and the Shadow Network Podcast. Like and subscribe.
Hello, I'm Truman Bradley, speaking for your local Chrysler dealer. And tonight I have a real challenge for you, because we believe that 15 minutes here can change 15 years of car buying habits. And that's especially true if you now drive one of the two major competitive cars in Chrysler's price class. In fact, every day more and more folks just like you are making the big switch to the exciting new 56 Chrysler. But let's spend a Saturday morning with the owners of this sleek new power-style Chrysler, and I'll show you some of the reasons why. Notice how your neighbors look with admiration as you drive out in your new Chrysler. And no wonder, from the rakish flare of its new flight-swept rear fenders, right up to its bold but elegant new front styling, the new power-style Chrysler emphasizes the forward look of power in motion.
Looks like it's still moving, even when it stops.
This is Christian culture commentary about media, trust, and the people who shape what millions believe. The Shadow Network Podcast.
That's right, it's time for Voices from the Other Side, where we get a chance to hear from friend and foe alike, mostly critics, really, and get the alternative perspective, shall we say. Let's see what we got here. Subject line, encouraged. Hey, Don, regular listener here. I just wanted to say I'm actually glad you guys are doing something besides UFOs this week. Don't get me wrong, I like the weird stuff, but I think you might have a hidden talent for political and media commentary. The way you connect trust, deception, faith, and culture feels different from the usual political yelling. I'd actually like to hear more shows like this, where you take something everyone is watching happen and explain the deeper machinery underneath it. Well, I'm with you there. So, yeah, keep the UFO files open, he says. But don't be afraid to lean into politics and media more often. I think there's something more there. Bruce from Philadelphia. Philly. Thanks, Bruce. We don't do a lot of political shows, to be clear, because, well, everyone else does. There's plenty of politics out there. But I get your meaning and see nothing wrong with it. Our next issue is a little on the political side, one could say. It's a show that is already gaining, actually, a lot of interest because it addresses what a lot of creators never hear from the YT, that is YouTube gurus. So stay tuned for that in 2 weeks. Next, we've got subject line, curious but not sold yet. I'll be honest, I'm still trying to figure out what the Shadow Network really is. Sometimes it feels like a UFO show, sometimes it feels like a theology show with Art Bell. But I'll give you this, it's interesting. I don't always know where you are going, but I usually want to hear where it lands. So I'm not fully sold yet, but I'm not kicking you out of my feed either. I think I need a few more episodes before I decide whether this is brilliant, strange, or both. Just give it to us straight, please. Dan from Florida. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, that's YouTube's problem too, actually. Doesn't really have like a classification for the Shadow Network podcast. What's valuable, I think, about SNP, we think, is it offers the listener something that can't be gotten from any other channel on YouTube. Now, if only Mr. Potato Head could figure that out, we'd probably be in really good shape. Next up here, we have subject line category complaint. Look, Don, I'm going to be blunt with you guys. I think this show has an identity problem. One week it sounds like a paranormal UFO program. The next week it sounds like political commentary. Then suddenly we're talking about theology, media, AI, and whatever else wandered into the studio. At some point, you have to pick a lane. If you're a UFO show, be a UFO show. If you're a political show, be a political show. But trying to stitch all of this together under one mysterious shadow network, quote unquote, umbrella can start sounding like undocumented, baseless drivel, dressed up as depth without examples. Please be something rather than everything, and maybe I'll come back some other time. Neil from New Hampshire. Okay. Thanks, Neil. It's not an uncommon complaint, I won't lie, but it seems to have more to do with what you're used to listening to, I think. SNP sounds different because it is different. It's not so much that we want to be everything to everyone. It's just that we have a wide umbrella of interest, you understand, which means we usually have a little something for everyone. Thanks for the email, Neil from New Hampshire. And that's Voices from the Other Side. Okay, Data, if you would, please give us a little review of what we touched on this evening and where we're headed in 2 weeks' time.
Don, my closing analysis is that tonight we did not simply identify big media moving onto YouTube. We identified a trust migration from institutions to personalities. The old media model asked people to trust the building, the network, the desk, the logo, the suit. The new model asks people to trust the person, the former anchor, the podcaster, the independent voice saying, I'm not like them. But leaving the institution does not automatically purify the messenger. A professional broadcaster plugged into an attention machine does not necessarily produce more transparency. It may produce a more portable, more profitable version of the same old game. Capture attention, feed the tribe, and make emotional intensity feel like truth. That matters because a society starving for integrity is vulnerable to anyone who knows how to perform sincerity. So the warning is not trust no one. The warning is do not surrender your judgment to a corporation, an institution, or a talking head simply because they learned how to hold your attention. And in 2 weeks, we go underneath the floorboards. Next time on the Shadow Network, issue number 72, The Attention Machine, when the algorithm blames the creator. The suit came off tonight. Next time, we look at the machinery under the skin.
As for my own final frequency this evening, there was a time when trust wore a suit. It sat behind a desk, spoke in measured tones, and told a nation what had happened while the rest of us sat in our living rooms and listened. We didn't always know the people behind the words. We trusted the room, the logo, the ritual, the machinery of authority. Then the suit came off. The desk disappeared. The studio became smaller. The voice became closer, more personal, more intimate, more like a friend leaning across the table than an anchor speaking from a tower. But the question remains, did truth get closer, or did the costume simply change? Because a lie does not become truth when it leaves a network. Manipulation does not become honesty when it buys a microphone. And trust does not become safer simply because it has a human face. The old media asked us to trust the institution. The new media asks us to trust the personality. But wisdom asks us to test them both. Not with cynicism, not with paranoia, not with the lazy comfort of believing everyone is lying, but with discernment. Because in an age where attention is currency, sincerity can be staged, outrage can be monetized, and authenticity can become just another uniform. So don't worship the desk, don't worship the microphone, don't worship the person who tells you they're the only one brave enough to speak plainly. Instead, test the signal, watch the fruit, ask who benefits when your trust is captured. And remember this, the truth does not need a suit, but neither does deception. I'm Don James. This has been the Shadow Network Podcast. Stay awake, stay human, and keep looking up, my friends.
No network desk, no corporate suit, no approved talking head telling everyone what reality is allowed to be. Before you know it, they'll be taking my reserved parking privileges away.
I'm just after 7 o'clock to finish. Dream Team's